Good morning, everyone. I've said this before, but I want to start changing the direction of hymn history a little bit. I can keep on talking about the histories behind some of these beloved hymns, but I wanted to, as we lead into the summer, actually start interviewing some of y'all and to find out not just the histories of these hymns, but your histories with these hymns. And so I thought, who better to start off with than my own wife and my needy dog, as he's
That's him right there.
looking for attention. It's Charlie. So just to start off, I'm not going to be talking a whole lot. I really just want this to be y'all and to hear the stories that y'all have to tell. So I'm going to say first, Jenna, introduce yourself and your history with hymns, your background.
Me, my hymn history?
Your hymn history.
So I come from a predominantly Catholic upbringing, and we did not have an emphasis on worship as far as singing goes. We had our own way of worshiping, but not really with singing. And so I didn't really start learning worship music until we started hanging around the Southern Baptists. Mm-hmm. And then
whenever she says that she grew up predominantly Catholic, she means on one side Hispanic and on the other Italian. So two different flavors of Catholicism born into it.
Overall, kind of like, Catholic Mecca. So
we've got the pictures of the baptism to prove it.
Very Catholic. But once we started hanging out with the Southern Baptists, that's when I was like, wow, we sing to God. This is crazy. But it was all very modern music. I mean, of course, I knew Amazing Grace, but I think even non-Christians know the song Amazing Grace, the hymn. So, but when I went to college and I started going to LFC and I joined the worship band at LFC, obviously I started leading, mostly modern worship music. I was introduced to some hymns, which I loved them. I thought they were great. But my real crash course into hymns came when University Avenue needed people to lead worship. And so Eddie came up to me one day and was like, hey, we need you to do this. And I said, I don't really know any of these hymns. And he said, that's okay, I'll pick them. And so about every other Sunday or so, I would lead worship at UA, and Eddie would pick 6 or 7 of the songs, and I would get to pick 1 or 2 because I just didn't know enough. We'd be singing the same 7 or 8 hymns every Sunday. And I would spend a few days frantically trying to learn them. And it was tough. It was tough, not just musically learning them, but to be really honest and vulnerable, there are some people who were definitely not for me. Just to say the least. Definitely not for me, and definitely not encouraging and championing me. And so I would honestly, I on every Sunday that I would lead, I would go into the stairwell, the back stairwell that's hidden, that goes up to the baptistry kind of. I would hide in that stairwell and cry and pray and panic before every Sunday morning. So if if I ever seemed a little shaky on Sunday mornings, it wasn't my voice, it was my anxiety.
Yeah, well, we've kind of laughed about this in the past because I can't imagine. I get anxious before I would lead on Sunday mornings, and I know all these hymns. I grew up with them. They're part of my DNA. You're literally memorizing and learning these hymns. 5, 6 different hymns a week, which is a lot for anyone.
It was terrifying. But then after I graduated college, I moved to Tempe, Arizona, to work with the Tempe Church of Christ as a campus ministry apprentice. But along with starting a campus ministry, this church also wanted to transition to instrumental music and also to transition to including women. So they naturally saw the woman who plays guitar and was like, yes, you're a great candidate for this. And so hopefully they don't regret that. And so I was tasked with helping to transition this church into instrumental worship without losing hymns. And so I think when I got there, everyone assumed that I was only going to play modern music and that I hated the hymns and I never wanted to use them. But at Tempe, we would sing about 7 songs every Sunday, and 5 or 6 of them, or 4, 5, 6 of them would be hymns. We'd only do like 1 or 2, sometimes on a crazy Sunday, 3 of the more modern worship songs. And so it took a while, but people, I think, finally trusted me that I do love hymns. So that's kind of where I've been. My hymn history.
And then I dragged you back to Austin to marry me.
To marry him. I got a good deal, I think.
So, Jenna, then, why don't you tell us what hymn God has put on your heart today?
So, I love the hymn. You can't see this, but I'll show you anyway. His Grace Reaches Me. And I was first introduced to this because it was a song that Eddie picked out for Sunday morning. I'm sure he was preaching about grace, something, I don't know. Mm-hmm. And so he's like, this will be great. And so I learned it, and this one was really intimidating for me because everyone else is just going, ah.
It's very choral.
Yes, and I'm just singing the words by myself. So I was very intimidated by it. And I did my normal routine, the hiding in the stairwell, crying, praying, panicking before service. But for some reason, when I got up and I started singing this song, I just felt so at peace and so at ease. And I just do. I just love this song. And it makes me feel peaceful and at ease and just really happy every time I sing it.
So what is it about that hymn? So it's at this crucial point in your life, very vulnerable point in your life where you're trying to learn all these different hymns and lead a congregation with a lot of people who've known this 3 times as long as you've been alive. And yet leading that. So was it this song particularly, or was it just that moment in time that brought you that peace? Things just clicked.
I think it was. I feel like God used this song to touch my heart in that moment, and I still love this hymn. But you're absolutely right. Like, this song came out in 1964, and I'm sure some of our members remember when this was a hip modern song. But I mean, there's just so many things I love about it. I think the thing that just a few lines that I really love are when they say sent from the Father, like grace, sent from the Father, and it thrills my soul. I just love that. I think that we should feel a thrill in our soul when we think about God's love and grace for us. And also, I really like this line, which is really surprising if you know me well. Now I'm under his control and I'm happy in my soul just to know his grace reaches me. I tend to be a very rebellious person, and when someone tries to control me, I tend to behave in a very uncontrollable way. Ben's laughing because he has seen this firsthand. He's one of my many victims. Anyway, and so, but there's something... because of God's grace and because of the nature of God's grace and because he is so trustworthy, I feel very at peace knowing that I am under God's control and that God, and that though God does not control my steps, right? God will not impose his will on all my decisions. We do have free will. He does set the path before me. And that makes me feel so at ease, and to know that that path is covered in grace, because I would mess up on these hymns all the time. I would have awkward voice cracks and I'd sing the wrong verse, and I'd think in my head, his grace reaches me, his grace reaches me.
Well, yeah, we were even laughing about this yesterday because Charlie was getting all anxious at the LFC graduation. And we had him off leash outside of that area, outside, and he was getting really anxious. And Jenna laughed and said, sometimes I feel like he gets even more anxious when he's not on a leash. And so you actually started singing that line, now I'm under his control and I'm happy in my soul, because we started getting this word picture, and there's a beauty to that, I think, where it's not because the leash is what gives us security, it's because he knows us.
Yeah, it's because he trusts the hands in which the leash is in. He trusts us, and we're holding the leash.
Right, like the lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. The reason that trust is easier is because it's not that you know the path, it's because you know the one that sets the path.
Yeah.
And there's a beauty and security in that. Absolutely beautiful song. And I'll play it afterward, and just so y'all can hear it a little bit and talk just a small bit about the history. You aren't going to escape that easy. But kind of the last thing with this is I want to know, what do you want people to, what do you hope for others when they engage with this hymn?
Well, so Mr. Gleason, the writer of this hymn, I think that he is really trying to help us understand the immeasurable depth and beauty of God's grace. You know, he uses words like deeper than the ocean, wider than the sea, higher than the mountain, brighter than the sun. Those, like, these ideas, right? We don't understand really how deep the ocean is. We have numbers for it, but we don't really understand. Like, we don't really understand how bright the sun is, right? He's using these massive things and saying that God's grace is greater, it's deeper, it's brighter, it's higher. And so it makes sense then that his next line would be, and it thrills my soul. So what I want for our people is when we sing this song, to let it thrill your soul. So much, this might be a controversial thing to say, so much of the time I feel like our worship, we don't look very happy. We don't look very happy, and I think that, or even we don't look very emotive, you know, because maybe someone is really sitting inside themselves having a very deep emotional experience, but that has an expression, or oftentimes we sit here very uncomfortably during our worship. But if we really understand God's grace, I think that should thrill us. And then even he uses the line, greatest of treasures, and it's mine today. If we had a great treasure in front of us, we are going to be just so excited and happy. So that's what I want for us, is I want for us to be enthralled by Jesus.
Yeah, and again, I kind of get that picture of Charlie, like when we come back home after we've been gone even 10 minutes, but if we've been gone for any bit longer than that, he literally just like bounces all paws off the ground. There's a physical aspect to worship, and it's uncomfortable a lot of the times, but absolutely. So I'm going to go on and talk a little bit about the history after this, but I just want to thank Jenna for taking this time to introduce us to one of her favorite songs, and one that has a lot of meaning for her. So thank you, sweet wife.
Thanks, sweet husband.
I appreciate Jenna taking a little bit of time out to talk us through her experience with hymns and His Grace Reaches Me. So I just wanted to play it for y'all and give you a little bit more background about the hymn. There's not a lot of stuff out there specifically about His Grace Reaches Me. Jewel Gleason was inducted into the Gospel Hall of Fame in, I believe, 1964 as part of the Gospel Heirs, which if you grew up in the Church of Christ, you might know that one. But I know it because I was actually taught by one of the Gospel Heirs. Growing up in Cleburne, Cliff Holden, he was a song leader at the church that I grew up in, and he taught me a lot. And so it's kind of interesting to find out that Jewel Gleason was part of the Gospel Heirs and how things connect. So anyway, His Grace Reaches Me, beautiful hymn. And Jewel used to write songs mostly to teach. He's a teacher who taught math and geometry and history, and he loved using music as a way to memorize things. And I completely agree with that. Ended up later on opening a music store, and just led a really rich life. So this is His Grace Reaches Me. And you're going to need to listen to this on YouTube. Find a recording of a group doing this, because it's not good enough with one person. Because underneath the melody, you have the sopranos going, deeper than the oceans. You have these other three parts singing ahs, which is really uncommon in hymns, but absolutely beautiful, where it's just like this, So while the sopranos are going deeper than the oceans, these other three parts are going. Anyways, absolutely beautiful. Not going to be able to duplicate that on a piano or by myself. So I will do my best, but this is His Grace Reaches Me. Deeper than the oceans and wider than the sea is the grace of the Savior for sinners like me. Sent from the Father, and it thrills my soul just to feel and to know that His blood makes me whole. His grace reaches me, yes, His grace reaches me, and will last through eternity. Now I'm under His control, and I'm happy in my soul, just to know that His grace reaches me. It's a really beautiful song. Some interesting chords in there. That little in my soul, and that tenor part at the end. I love that. Absolutely love this hymn. Again, really thankful to Jenna for taking some time out. Looking forward to hearing some of y'all's stories. I'll be reaching out to a few of y'all, and if you want to be involved in this and you have a story to tell, let me know. Text me or email me at benstewart@uachurch.org, and I'd be happy to get you on a schedule and to spend some time talking to you. I'll visit you, no worries. I'm double vaxxed. We can do it on the porch or whatever you're comfortable with. And I hope you all have a good day.